can't tell the story is hilarious or heartbreaking. I think it. I can't
You ever
tell
watch
the
him?
story is hilarious or heartbreaking.
Okay, Uja, greetings. Welcome. So we'll do a brief prayer and uh, and then we'll begin. So please keep your devices muted. And if you're able to, you can chant in your sacred worship space. So sitting with your back straight, shoulders over your hips, in call and response manner in your sacred worship space. Om Amun Rapata. Om Amun Rapata. Om Amun Rapata. Om Amun Rapata. Amun Moon Konsu. Amun Moon Konsu. Moon Konsu. Amun Moon Konsu. Om Nata Pata 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 Pata. Okay, Ucha, greetings. A brief introduction that in our devotionals in the morning, at the end of the devotion, we do a brief wisdom teaching. And now we're on the topic of Apple Moon. Uh, and uh, for the past two of these brief presentations, I've been trying to paint the picture of the time in which Apple Moon was living in and the difficulties that presented itself during that time as he was trying to assist his student in understanding the teaching. But the student was having difficulty because of all of the divergent philosophical ideas that were coming into Kemet at the time during the downfall period, very late period. And I did a presentation on the desecration of this temple that we're going to look at this evening. And the time was, and then looking back on it, the time was too short and it could have gone into much more detail uh, to do a better job, essentially. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're just going to do a better job of the presentation. So as spiritual practitioners, we can get a better historical perspective of our tradition and why things have happened the way they have happened since the downfall period, or during. And many people ask the question of, well, what happened to ancient Egyptian civilization? How did it fall, etc. And this presentation may answer or give some insight into the answer to that question. We don't have to go into it in detail. I'm zooming in on the in detail the issue of uh, the origins of ancient Kemetic civilizations, because there have been many adept scholars that have dealt with that issue. And no serious historian or archaeologist uh, would would disagree with the findings and the conclusions that ancient Kemetic civilization was produced by an African culture. Anyone who is serious about history and paleontology, archaeology, they would not refute that or try to refute that. Anyone who is not serious and trying to purport an agenda, whatever that agenda might be, they'll come up with ideas and theories to try to debunk well-established uh, findings and scientific conclusions. So we don't have to deal too much into that issue. Uh, Actually, Chikanta Diop wrote a book, The African Origin of Civilization. And then a few years after that, Sibai Dr. Muata Ashby produced a fantastic work on the African origin of not only civilization, but ethical, spiritual philosophy. And the same conclusion, he studied in Africa, in the South, amongst what would people would be today called or referred to as Black Africans, which in a normal world will not be such a big deal. But in the world in which we live and what has happened, and certain philosophies and race identity philosophy for nefarious means has come up. So the scholars have had to counter, uh, you know, certain claims that were made. But it's important to say in a presentation like this so that we can understand what it is that we are dealing with. This is not something that was done by aliens or people from Mesopotamia or, anywhere else. We're dealing with African culture. And it's the same as if you want to uh, learn about the Dalai Lama or, or the culture that is now in Dharamsala, India. You would have to say, well, this culture that's in Dharamsala, India, its origins are in Tibet. You would have to make that conclusion if you're serious about history and study and research and mystical philosophy. And not only that, serious about honesty and truth. So that's what we're dealing with. An early explorer of Africa went into Africa and he was amazed. And I forgot his name now, but his writings are there. That he wrote these words. He traveled throughout Africa and couldn't find one vagrant, one homeless person, one destitute person, uh, one person hungry, doing without, one person unsheltered, couldn't find any. He went back to Europe and he told them, if you want to conquer Africa, you would have to destroy their culture. That would be the only way. That their culture is so strong and their culture is so righteous that the only way to conquer them would be to destroy their culture. So keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. As we zoom in, you are now looking at the facing pylons of what is referred to now as the Temple of Luxor. Its original name is Ifrit Risut, and it's located in what the Greeks would call Thebes. It's in the city of Waset. The ancient Kemetic name is Waset. And you see this walkway. This walkway has been revitalized by Egyptologists. And now we're looking south. If we were to turn around, we would look north, and you can take this walkway all the way to the Karnak Temple. So the Karnak Temple, and it's only about a mile actually about 1.7 miles walk from this temple to the Karnak Temple, utilizing this walkway. And what that means is that these two temples are metaphysically linked. They're metaphysically connected. And this walkway was used for certain processions and rituals, one of which was a Opet festival. So what we have here is an ancient walkway that has been revitalized. But the implications of that revitalization is immense. It shows that these temples are mystically connected and metaphysically connected. And in fact, they're theurgically connected, meaning that the science of the temple. So you have to keep the temples in a certain order so that the metaphysics and the process of the temple mystery can be maintained and fulfilled by the practitioners, the priests and priestesses who run the metaphysics of the temple, that lead themselves, the clergy, that take on the process of spiritual evolution, meaning the process that leads to spiritual enlightenment. So we're looking at what is referred to as the facing pylons, but from a distance. So now let's get closer. If we get closer, this is what the pylons look like today. And you can see they were built brick by brick, piled up on each other. And you can see faintly here, there's a war scene. The Prada in his chariot in his forest. He's fighting against the enemies. This is a metaphorical war scene. It's not an actual war scene. It's symbolic of the war against unrighteousness. The Prada is waging a war against unrighteousness and untruth. In other words, that's what is going on in the temple. It's a war against egoism and pride and unrighteousness, untruth. In essence, it's a war against ignorance. That's what takes place within the temple. A temple narrative. So the temple is designed for the spiritual evolutionary process of a human being. If that human being is able to purify themselves, to enter into the temple protocol as an initiate and go through the temple process, being led by the clergy. And so the Purada is a symbol of every qualified spiritual aspirant that enters into the temple. And so what's on the pylon is letting you know that when you enter this place is what's going to be going on. And actually, you can see a part of the colonnade here. In ancient times, you would not be able to stand outside and see that because there will be large doors here. So the temple will be closed, except for the initiates. And then you have this structure is referred to as an obelisk, but its Kemetic name is a tekken. And as you can see, it has hieroglyph inscriptions on all sides of the tekken. And when we went here on our last trip, I stood here and I read the glyphs on this side. And at the base of the tekken, you have 4 baboon divinities. And they have their hands up in a dual posture. And they represent, they are the spirits of the dawn. And this temple is oriented north-south. So it is not relating to it's not relating to the worship of the sun. It's relating to if you are walking up to here and the spirits of the dawn are in a dual posture, it means that there's something about you that has already been recognized. And what that is, that's what you discover in the temple. And there's to be 2 of these. There's to be one on the other side, but that was taken down and given to the French. It's in Paris. It's in Paris right now. So that's one element of the temple that's already messed up. What I mean by that is that the metaphysics of the temple is already being infringed upon by taking off one of the obelisks and sending it away. And that is a symbol of conquest. That's what that means. So, not good. You see these slots in the pylons? These are where the large poles would be held there. And at the top of the poles would be the flag of the temple. You have these 2 huge statues, one on each side. They're about maybe around 43 feet high, tall. And these are stone carved statues of Ramses II, Ramses II. And so here would be the entrance to the temple. And this is where you would walk. So think of it as you are a new initiate and you are walking through this area. So what kind of experience that should be? That's the key. So keep in mind when these temples were built, there's no TV, there are no laptop computers. Not that those things are better for humanity, but keep in mind your mind is in a different configuration because of the lack of certain devices or technologies that are available today. I'm not saying they're better. It's been known now that cell phones can cause brain tumors. So don't put the phone to your ear, and don't use the earbuds that are stuck to your ear. Use the one that's have the cord on it. It's safer. So there's already one thing wrong with this temple, meaning at the hands of conquest. And nothing wrong with the temple in and of itself. These are metaphysical devices, structures that were created by spiritual scientists, people who knew how to configure buildings to produce a certain metaphysical effect that allowed for the positive spiritual evolutionary process of the human soul. Soul. Dogs and pigs have soul too. So, but souls that are conjoined with the construct of what will be referred to as a human being. So, like the mind of a human being is not the same as the mind of a dog. It works a little bit different, and the senses operate differently. So, if we now take an above view of the temple, we see that, so we were out here looking in. The doors aren't there, so we got a glimpse of the colonnade. And here is where you walk in. So as you walk in, you should be having a certain kind of experience. So before we get to that, this structure is a colonnade. And this court, this open court, is very large. And it is referred to as a hypostyle hall because the columns are on the periphery. This structure will be called a hypostyle court. So I'm sorry, this open area is a peristyle court or peristyle hall because the columns are on the periphery. This area will be a hypostyle hall because the hall of many columns. And then here you have the inner shrine rooms and the roof, all dilapidated now. And you see the roofs of the very back room that is missing. So when you walk in here, you're a new initiate. You put yourself in that place. And for the first time you walk in here, you're supposed to be having a specific kind of experience. And you cannot have that experience today because the architecture of this area of the temple, the metaphysical architecture has been disrupted. You see this open space? It's peristyle court. That's what this should look like. But it doesn't because of this structure, this object. And I've been inside of this object, this structure. And this is the Abu Haggad Mosque. And is actually built on top of an earlier structure that was placed here. That was meaning that the same area that was a basilica was a church. And then the So so the Christians put a church here when the Roman Empire converted to Christianity. And then later on, yeah, and so the church was put here around 395 AD. And then later on, when the Muslims came in around 640 AD, they replaced the church with a mosque. And so the mosque is still there. The point is that the architecture of the temple has been disrupted, and thus the metaphysics, how the temple operates energetically and feeling wise as you walk in, has been infringed upon, has been disrupted. So so this is the entrance. So let's say we're standing out here and we're walking into here. This is the entrance. And the entrance stays tight until, stays closed until here. But then it's supposed to open up, but it doesn't open up because the mosque is here. So you have a peripheral view on your right, but you don't have a peripheral view on your left. So now the hemispheres of the brain are incongruent from a metaphysical perspective.
Uja,
Uja,
are you are you still describing the image with the pathway? Because it sounds like you're not, but that's what I'm seeing on my screen.
I'm showing the entrance to the temple. Does everyone see that?
Where you're pointing to the mosque?
No, I'm I'm looking at the entrance into the temple now. It's from looking out, but looking at the entrance of the temple. Does everyone
Okay.
see that, or is that an issue everyone is having?
Me, we're looking at the pathway, but you were describing the mosque, and I don't see your cursor for where you're pointing.
Well, the mosque is on the right-hand side, the wall of the mosque. Do you see that? Yes, Armand?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. My apologies. Perhaps.
Uja, I
Would
have
you
the same problem.
say that again?
I have the same problem. I cannot see the temple.
Okay. What are you seeing?
Only the path.
Okay, which pathway? The pathway outside where we were looking at the front of the temple?
Uja, it's the pathway where the Hura markets are lining the pathway.
Okay. So did you all see the overhead view of the temple?
On
Okay. So do you see the overhead view of the temple now?
me, now we see it.
Okay, so it appears I have to stop share and share every time I change photographs. Okay, so no problem.
What's up?
That's it. So, so do it for that. So here is what I was talking about. This area is the peristyle. This is a peristyle court. So before that, this is
Jackson.
here is the front of the temple, and So we were outside looking into the temple. Here's the walkway into the temple. This is the colonnade. And here's the peristyle court. And here is the hypostyle hall. And beyond the hypostyle hall are the inner shrine rooms. You see some parts of the roof is missing. And all the way to the back, you know, the roof is off. And for you to have are two, you see how this space is wide open here. That's what you're also supposed to have here. But you don't because of this object is infringing on the space that's supposed to be open. So you have a kind of a disruption of the architecture, the aesthetics, the metaphysics of the temple. So if you're walking into here, you will have a peripheral view on your right, but you will not have a peripheral view, an open peripheral view on your left, looking at statues and glyphs and iconography. So right there, the hemispheres of the brain are incongruent, are made incongruent when you walk into the temple in this kind of environment. So I'll now do the stop share and reshare, since that's how it works. Okay. Now this is the entrance into the temple. We're looking out of the temple. We're standing in the temple, a few feet beyond the doorway, looking out of the temple. And on your left here, you can see it opens. Well, if you're walking into, it would be on your right. When you're looking this way, it's on your left. But if you're walking in, it would be on your right. So on your right, you would have an expanded view on your right. But this structure would be impeding your view to the left. So that creates a kind of disruption into the nervous system pathways of the brain as it is taking all of this in, as your senses are and your feelings are assimilating the imagery of the temple. But in ancient times, of course, this wasn't here. So the full nature and metaphysical process of the temple was operational. Stop share and then reshare. So I'm going to show you a picture on the ground view of the first hypostyle hall. So I'll show you the overhead view again. And this is the first hypostyle hall. I'm sorry, peristyle court. This is the hypostyle hall, and this is the peristyle court. So I'm going to show you a view of the peristyle court, this peristyle court, so that you can get an idea of the effect and the experience that you would have walking into this court that you don't have walking into a court number 2. Can you all see this picture? Gosh.
We were seeing the desktop with many pictures on it. What's up?
Okay, you should be able to see this picture now.
Nee, we see the open court.
So as you come into the open court, you can see how vast it is. And this would be on your right side. And this is the kind of effect that you should be having in a previous court. Now, so this sharing and stopping sharing is making it a little laborious. It's okay. And now this is the left side. So this is looking towards the east. And so you can see a vast open space. So you're supposed to be having this kind of experience on the other court as well. So I'm going to stop share. And then show you something else that might be a little startling. But we need to be, as humanity, we should be discussing these issues. But mostly humanity is in a stage of immaturity. It's hard to discuss these issues in an open and righteous way because of defensiveness or unrighteousness in the heart. So due to this process, what I'll do is just go to the photos I showed this morning. Make it easier. So if you go beyond the hypostyle hall, you come to an open area, and what you're faced with is this structure. And this structure is a damage to the wall of the temple that has formed an area that is a church area. So it's a Christian chapel built into the wall of the temple. And so if you're walking in here and you're faced with this kind of iconography, it doesn't make it's not congruent with the nature of the temple. So you're walking in here looking for ancient Kemetic teachings, philosophy, and then you're faced with this. So the temple is once again desecrated. But the implications of that are, from a spiritual perspective, is deleterious. Let's say you're coming here for the first time, and you're trying to make sense of whatever it is that you're faced with coming into the ancient Egyptian temple, and you're faced with a Christian iconography. What kind of effect will that have on you? What kind of confusion that can produce? Not only in your feeling, but also in your ideas and your concepts of what religion is, or what is mystical religion. The reason is mystical religion and the Abrahamic religions are not compatible from the perspective of process. It's like having a Lamborghini and a Toyota, something like that. It's a crude example. You get what I mean? The process of mystical religion, what is etched in these walls that has been covered over, leads to a non-dual experience of a mystical relation, or a mystical realization of one's own true divine nature. That's what all these rituals and practices and all of this text, when it comes down to it, is designed to lead a human being to spiritual illumination. So it goes beyond faith. So it's not faith-based. There is some aspect of faith, and that is referred to as informed faith. In a mystical process, what you're trying to do is you're trying to prove the premise of the teaching that you learn as you enter into the temple process. Through the teaching, you learn that there's something about you that transcends your time and space existence, that transcends your egoistic notion of who and what you think you are. But in a faith-based religion, in the Abrahamic or dualistic religions, however you want to call them, the whole idea of the religion is to have faith. And faith is having a kind of conviction without proofs. And so from the perspective of internal process, they are incompatible. Because in a faith-based process, there is no way that you can be one with the divine, one with God. There's no way that you can be up there with Muhammad or up there with Jesus, with Christ. In a mystical religion, it is told to you that you are essentially the same as the divinity of which you worship. It's just something that you have to go through the process of discovering that within yourself. So you have to go through a mystic process through 4 primary, however serious disciplines. And they are called Shedi disciplines. And Shedi means to penetrate. To penetrate what? To penetrate the Shetao. So to penetrate the mystery. The mystery of what? Netter. So Shedi Shetao Netter, to penetrate the mysteries of the divine. The hidden mysteries of the divine. And through these 4 primary disciplines, that is how it's done. Rekshedi, which is penetration through wisdom teaching. Uashu Shedi, penetration through devotion. Uashedi, penetration through meditation. And Ma'at Adi Shedi, or Adi Shedi, penetration through righteous action. And you have to put all of those together. In the temple to Asar in Abydos, there are 7 shrines, and in one of the shrines is dedicated to Seti. Seti Ua, Seti the first. And it is told explicitly that Jehuti bestows upon the initiate the practice of Simatawi, which is translated to Egyptian yoga. You have been given Egyptian yoga to discover one's own true divine nature. In a faith-based process, you don't have that kind of process. You are to pray, you are to have faith, pray and have faith, pray and have faith. And that can take you a certain distance, but it doesn't take you all the way to the transcendental nature of Netter. And so this kind of iconography is a contradiction in terms and process of the original temple. So it is an infringement, a desecration, how would Christians feel if someone walks into their church, take over a part of their church, the holiest part of the church, and erected something else in the church? That's what's going on here. Except that through invasions by different groups, Hyksos, sea people, et cetera, et cetera. The population, it created a refugee crisis. And scientists have discovered that through DNA technology, that the original inhabitants of what is referred to as Egypt, Kemet today, migrated back into the south and west of Africa as refugees due to the crisis that was taking place with the continual invasions from other groups coming from Asia Minor, etc. And so people had to move, and the priests and priestesses, the clergy were kicked out, some were killed, and then the temples taken over. And not only the temples were shut down, they were closed. Firstly, by the Christians, and then when the Muslims came in, they upheld the closure. They have not lifted the ban on the ancient Egyptian religion. So the ancient Egyptian religion cannot be practiced in a full way in its I guess its homeland, Kemet, Egypt. Because of the ban on the religion. It's illegal. So think about that. So as a humanity, we need to speak on these issues and try to rectify these problems. So this is one. I'll show you another one. Yeah. So this is a good example of what happened. Here you have the this is to the right of the chapel that we saw, the Christian chapel that was dug into the temple. And here you have what is called a fresco. The fresco is painting on plaster and put on a wall. And what happens, they put the fresco, some of it has fallen off, but you can see the remnants of the grout still on some parts of the wall where the fresco have fallen off. And what happened is that they put the fresco over the iconography and the hieroglyphs. And for normal people, this is, just history or whatever, but this is serious. This is serious. This is disrespect, desecration, and so the mosque also is a sign of disrespect, and they have asked to have it removed, and Egyptologists have asked to have it removed, and they refuse to remove it. And so that's a sign of disrespect. And this also is a sign of disrespect. And it's serious situation. Yeah, I mean it has serious it's serious. It's like if you were to, what if someone were to go into a mosque and put plaster on the wall or build their structure inside of a mosque? How would the Muslims feel about that? And so that's what this is. And as practitioners, we need to be centrally focused on our spiritual process, but also aware of history and aware of history from the perspective of truth. It would be nice if all human beings, a majority of human beings could be that way, but there are a lot of issues that get in the way of people acknowledging truth. And so this is so it's plastered over, etc. And if your temples are closed and shut down, and people are not there to defend their temples, then things like this can happen. Or if you're weak militarily and you get conquered, etc. So we're going to go back outside so we can have some closing thoughts. And these are some sobering thoughts that this kind of presentation should develop within you a kind of deeper affection and love for the teaching, a kind of deep reverence and deep affection. You know how you feel when you hear someone has been bullied. You don't take the side of the bully, you take the side of the person who has been hurt or damaged, and you try to give them good advice, etc. It's something like that, but it's deeper. It's kind of a deep reverence connection to the teaching that you try to make live in your own heart through your practice of the teaching and the philosophy. But also, as I was saying this morning, removing the effects of the infringement in your own life and mind. What are you doing that are mixing the teachings in your life? Your teaching, is you following the pure teaching? Or are you okay with other things coming in and infringing on your capacity to practice the pure teaching? These desecrations are a architectural representation of the corruption of the heart. And are you removing that corruption from your heart and allowing the pure teaching to enter? So happens that the sages, in their wisdom, built in stone and built a lot. It's hard to destroy it all. And they wrote a lot. So a lot has been preserved. And especially where they put a lot of their writings, because of the culture of the time. Putting manuscripts in with people who have been embalmed and mummified, etc. So this is what it means to conquer a people, to the degree that you have forgotten your your uh, your original religion, and it has been conquered out of you and beaten, sometimes literally beaten out of you. And to get along, to go along, or through force, you adopt something else that keeps you in the world. When the spiritual ancestors left for us and told us that living a life of aggrandizing the world is failure and corruption of the heart. And that when you are ready, you can come here to temple to discover what it means to transcend the world. When you are ready. But if you're conquered and you adopt something and that's all you know and you're holding on to that, and you're tied to the world. And then you come to like it, you come to love it because of the exuberance and the worldliness of it, and the pleasure of it. But the original teaching is saying that that is something else, and there's something that you should be discovering about yourself that goes beyond duality. And I use this temple to illustrate the principle, but this is not the only temple that you find this kind of damage. It's all throughout. If you know what to look for, you'll see it. You go into the temple of Aset, you see crosses all over, and you see egregious damage in the walls, crosses etched, dug into the walls, Christian crosses. It's not the only one, but it's a stark one. Why? Because the obelisk is gone. There's a building in the temple that shouldn't be there. And there's carvings in the walls of the temple that shouldn't be there, and frescoes that shouldn't be there. It's a stark example of the principle. And so, as spiritual practitioners, we have to work to remove the corruption from our hearts, practice the pure teaching, and grow spiritually over time with diligence and self-discipline. And that's what it's all about. So the temple can be damaged, but your heart and mind can be healed and realized and affirmed in higher consciousness. Okay, so Dua for joining in this short presentation. I think I got it out now. It's much better, but it's a weighty topic. And most people are not ready to hear certain things because of how the world is now and everything that has gone on. So in truth, we have to transform our lives. Teachings are there, books have been written. I mean, books by people who have realize teaching. There are classes, there are practices that have been shared. There are lectures that have been given, conferences that have been given. So it says something about the teaching that it can take such a blow, but it survives. It says something really profound about the teaching. And if you reflect on that, you hold that teaching in your heart. And the heart can be healed. Om Amun Rapta. Om Amun Rapta. Om Amun Rapta. Om Amun Rapta. Amun. Mun. Konsu. Amun. Mun. Konsu. Amun. Mun. Konsu. Amun. Mun. Konsu. The tap. Do everyone. The tap.